just hearing the theory of the soul principles already mobilizes a lot of energy. So as I always say, there's nothing more practical than good theory. So as you hear the theory, you will start creating alchemy within yourselves. You will shift your attitudes, I'm sure. And then when we release the know thyself exercises and you do them, you are going to create major shifts in your internal world, in your life. And you're going to see that ripple effect on a deeper level with people around you and the groups of people around you, especially your family. So the more awareness you have of the soul principles, the more you know how to behave in a way that brings the joy of life and what I call life connection in the Cardinal method. So really hearing the theory is literally like a mini constellation, so to speak. So that's why I advising you guys, have water nearby and breathe all the way, okay? So in your breath, make sure you breathe in at least 4 seconds for 4 seconds. Hold it a little bit and exhale for a little longer than 4 seconds, maybe 6 seconds, so that you make sure all the air is out of your lungs, okay? Deep breath, hold it a little bit, and let it out. If you have any questions about the last session, know that you can always hop online. People can come into this course anytime. It's a 12-month step course, but people can come on and just enjoy this anytime and throughout the year. So if you know people who will be benefiting, the sooner they come into the course, the better, because if they come in June, they're going to have 6 major sessions to digest. So it's better to be on the upward spiral with enough time to digest each step. But people can come to the course anytime. That's why I am telling you guys to just tell everyone you know about this, because the more people know about this content, first of all, the more you'll have vocabulary to talk to the people around you. But most importantly, it changes not only individual lives, but it does change the groups and the communities around us. So the more people are on board with us, the better, right? We are going to start in 2 minutes, so we're just waiting for a few more people to hop in. And this is a very dense and very beautiful subject. So I'm sure you guys are already feeling the energy. And maybe it's the energy of silence right now for you to connect with, because conscious silence, as I always say, is the biggest and greatest soul healer. So the conscious awareness and silence does wonders for the soul. But of course, you can ask questions. I'm sure you will have questions after we talk. All right. So just remember to breathe deep. Take deep breaths. Start connecting to yourselves and your awareness and your levels of awareness regarding the concept of soul that you have right now. Some of you have been with me before, so you already know this concept that is a broad concept of the soul. But some of you don't. So just think about what is the concept of soul that you have. And we have still 1 more minute before we start, and I'm going to share the screen. But just start connecting to that deep inner sacred part of yourself, the great observer, getting ready to expand our consciousness and awareness. This is quite the roller coaster drive in a sense, but it also brings a lot of peace and expansion in all levels. Just bring some more water here. All right, we've hit 7 since we have a lot of content to cover. I'm going to start sharing the screen. Make sure you ask questions right away. As soon as the questions pop in your mind, make sure you type them so we can answer them. All right? That's beautiful. So we're going to start with the 3 principles of the soul, which are part of human nature. So when we think of the soul is different from the spirit because the spirit has, we've talked about this before in the prior session. The spirit is a spark of joy. It's the light within. It's the higher self, so to speak, that connects to the abundance of life. But there can be a huge medieval wall of blockages between the light inside and the abundance, the external light and the abundance outside of us. The soul is not like the spirit because the soul has a history and the soul can get wounded. The soul is very sensitive and is easily wounded. So this is the first thing that I invite you to think about. There's a difference between the soul and the spirit, and there may be blockages or wounds or taints in the soul, so to speak. So when we focus on the soul, which is the subject of today's session, think of the soul as an ocean. In other words, think of the soul as water. And as we know, in many symbolic traditions, water corresponds to emotion in our lives. So the soul is mainly water and it's emotion. And as individuals, we have individual souls in our bodies. So the first concept of the soul tends to be individual. That's what everybody usually thinks of when they think of the soul. Each person has an individual soul, which is true. It's the water within, but it's also the water in our human bodies. Now, we all know that we are mostly made of water, and we're mostly made of soul in a human experience. So human nature has a lot to do with emotions, and it has a lot to do with the soul because it has a lot to do with water. This is literal in a physical sense. So we're not as separated. Try not to think of the soul as something that's very separated or dualistic when it comes to the body, because the soul can make the body sick, and we'll see, or healthy. And we'll see more about that throughout the session. So we talked about the soul on an individual level, but the focus tonight is the soul on another level, which is the collective aspect of the soul. So we have an individual soul, but we also belong to collective souls. And the collective souls flow. They're like rivers, and they flow through generations. They behave like energetic water flowing through generations in families, in cultures, and in humanity. So one of the things I want you to pay attention right now, because we're going to talk about the family soul tonight, is that in the same family, today it's less common, but in the generations of our grandparents and great grandparents, sometimes women would have children at age 16 and they would still be having children at age 42. So at least in my family, this is relatively common. There are, because I'm from Brazil, and in the generation of my grandparents, there are uncles who are younger than their nephews. So in the generation of the family, there is a difference regarding the generation of a culture and of humanities. I hope this makes sense for you. And that creates a little bit of confusion in a child's mind, because theoretically, as nature intended, the generations of a family should be matching the generations of cultures and humanity. But if that doesn't happen, if women keep having children with their daughters, that confusion may be created in the mind of a child. Okay? People who belong to the same family share the same soul water. So literally, the image that we're using here is different icebergs floating on the same ocean. You, your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandfather, your siblings, your children, are all little icebergs floating on the same soul ocean, the same family soul, which is the same ocean. So on a big picture level, we're immersed in an ocean of collective belonging. We don't have a collective soul. We belong to a collective soul in our families. So there are collective souls of families, which are the most visceral, intense of all. We have cultural souls, and then we have the soul of humanity. We are individuals, but we also have an aspect that, is very collective. We're individual icebergs in the family ocean. So the iceberg image is very good for us here because the tip of the iceberg is the conscious mind. We all use this image. We're very aware of it. It's 10% or less. In my experience, I tend to see people with sometimes 99% of unconscious mind and 1% of conscious mind regarding the family. I'm not talking about other areas of life. But when it comes to the family consciousness or unconscious mind, a lot of people have 1% of consciousness about their families and 99% of unconscious mind. And the more you learn about this, the more you participate in constellations and do energetic work, the more your tip of the iceberg will emerge from the water, and then you develop a larger percentage of consciousness about your family. But the family ocean, the soul over here, the water, and the unconscious mind are connected, right? So this is what we're going to talk about tonight. What goes on below the surface in the unconscious mind of an individual that is immersed in the soul of the family. So the family soul levels of consciousness are the ocean level in this perspective of the Cardinal method. All generational experiences and the collective belonging. Then we have the tip of the iceberg level, which is the individual conscious mind. And we have the hidden ice level, which is the individual unconscious mind, which is where we find the keys for liberation, release, and healing. Both here and here, conscious mind as well, but usually we find the biggest treasures over here in the attitudes that change regarding our families. So we share the same unconscious ocean with our ancestors, meaning in constellation tradition, in the constellation theory, what happens to you, to your mother, to your grandmother, and to your great-grandmother, even if they have passed away, is shared. So you share the same unconscious mind as your great-grandmother. So if something happened to your great-grandmother, you may feel it, even if it's not your individual experience. In the Cardinal method, we work with 7 generations back, sometimes 8, depending on the session. So under the water, our submerged minds, the unconscious individual mind, have access to all experiences. So this is you as a little iceberg who just fell off the glacier. And these are ancestors who have a lot more baggage over here. And underneath the water, you have access to this information. So you feel it. Remember that water is emotion, but you may not consciously know what's going on. You just feel a discomfort, or you feel something going on, but you can't quite put your finger on it because you don't have official stories. We're going to talk about that. One of the things that I see a lot in families is that sometimes when the collective content of the soul is too dense, and remember, this is a good image for us because water, when it's crystallized, when it becomes ice in a solid state, is less dense than the liquid state. So the family soul is more dense than the individuals. And sometimes when the soul is very dense, it may invade an individual mind. So the collective content over here invades an individual member of the family. It's what happens when people have schizophrenia, when they have mental illness, and that person may lose his or her sense of individuality. Now, I know there are multi-causal factors. Nothing is just one specific cause, but in a constellation perspective, Whenever there's mental illness or somebody is very self-destructive, that person is being invaded by the excessive contents of the family soul, of the history of the ancestors and all the past experiences. This is a boat towing an iceberg. Icebergs can be towed so that boats can, float around. And this is what happens when somebody there's an intervention and somebody needs to be taken to hospice or mental care facilities, because they cannot function as individuals, independent, stable individuals by themselves. So what happens when there's trauma in past generations and the ocean of the family soul is tainted? So these are oil spills, right? How does ancestral trauma affect us? So ancestral trauma taints the ocean, taints the family soul. Painful emotional experiences in past generations are wounds in the family soul. That's what we call a wound in the family soul. It taints the ocean. And sometimes the person may have passed away, but the open wound is still there. That ocean is still tainted. So the emotional pain of your great-grandmother may still be active in your DNA, even if she has passed away. And individuals get affected by the polluted water or the wounded, tainted soul. These are the dirty icebergs, right? So it's not your individual experience, but it's part of the family soul, so it affects you or it affects a family member. And it affects life in general. If there's a lot of family pain in past generations, the individuals that are alive in the present moment are affected, and life in general is affected by the lack of energy, or people who are too entangled in family pain. So what's the solution for ancestral family pain? How do we deal with that? How do we clean the ocean again? The first thing we need to do is to find out where the wounds are. So you gather the oil spill and you pinpoint what happened. And you know that by finding out everything you can about your ancestors and their life experiences. Ask the older family members, get the facts. Very few people do this. And that's the first thing you need to do. The second thing you need to do is to observe your ancestral wounds as part of your family soul that belong to you on a structure level, meaning they're a part of your DNA. Not that you have to repeat the pain. Some people do unconsciously repeat past pain. The pain of their grandmother, for instance, it's common. It doesn't have to happen that way. You can know the story and not repeat it in your life, but you have to acknowledge the fact that it is part of your energetic DNA. It's imprinted in your cells. You can't divorce yourself from that. You can't engage in that kind of separation. It's really about integrating and not about separating yourself from your ancestors. This is a blue iceberg, which means it comes from older glaciers, and it has been under a lot of pressure for many years, as opposed to the white icebergs that have more air and that come from younger glaciers. So whenever an older person has been through a lot of pressure and a lot of pain, it takes longer for them to dissolve. So when you honor the painful experiences of your ancestors, you can release the past. So the blue iceberg can finally melt and become the family soul. We release the past by creating transmutation. So literally, you gather the oil spill. This is one of the ways to clean oceans that have been, in ecological disasters. And you clean it, you burn it away, you create alchemy and release it. You melt the pain with ancestral healing through energy healing. A lot of you guys are either practitioners of energy healing modalities, or you have sessions with energy healers, right? Or energy healing practitioners. So when you bring the light to the family soul, you are doing something about the past pain. You're helping those icebergs get clearer and get light and melt away to clean that ocean. However, when the emotional wounds of the family soul are not released, they show up in the next generations as downward spirals. People get sucked into that trauma. So the soul, the collective soul, is very archaic. It's very primitive. It doesn't understand good or bad, right or wrong. It understands the truth of what is, what has happened, and everything belongs. So the soul only understands truth and what is not true. What wounds the soul is the absence of truth, is not honoring the truth, is not honoring what is. And whenever that happens, the soul creates a downward spiral and will make that truth be seen in the next generations. So with an individual mindset, we may think, well, that is not fair at all to individuals, because a wounded ancestor's pain may show up as disease in a child, genetic disease, or even cancer in children. There is no way a child is sick and there is nothing in the family system to look at. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but there's always a systemic family wound in either the generation of the grandparents or great grandparents that is making itself be seen as disease in the new generations. It's not about fair or not fair, it's about honoring the truth. We'll talk more about that throughout the session. So open ancestral wounds will make themselves present in the new generations in very different ways. Loneliness, if you have family members that are very lonely, or if you yourself feel lonely all the time, sadness, that's unnatural. We are designed to be happy, joyful, and fulfilled. So if that's not your state of being, something's wrong. It's not just about the chaotic world we live in today. It's also about past pain and generations before us that are still unfinished business. Overwhelm, not natural. Self-destruction and disease. Any of these things can be constellated, can be looked at. If something in the present moment is not going well, there is a root cause in the family soul. So how do we release and let go of those soul wounds? The first solution is dive deep within yourself. You can do a lot of individual work and it does bring results. So if you do your individual work, that is one option. Another option is to observe your family and learn all your ancestral stories, as I said before. So you do family constellation work, you do ancestral healing. That's another way to heal. You honor the past. It's one of the things I tell people. This is not as easy as it seems, but it's not that, it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. It's not that hard. It depends on the story. But instead of bad-mouthing the past and just saying bad things about ancestors, which I see a lot of people do, and judging them, honor the past. Once you learn the story, you honor the past and you let it go. You say goodbye. You leave it behind. And you move forward. People have a lot of difficulty with this. They tend to either be in stagnation mode or moving backwards and entangled in the family's past without even realizing it. But they have unfulfilling lives, right? When people are not joyful and happy and creative and living a wonderful life, it means they're either stagnant in a wound or reenacting a family wound. Being loyal to unhappy family members. We're going to talk more about that. So how do we do this? How do we honor the past? How do we say goodbye to it? How do we let it go? And how do we move forward? Observe if you as an individual are happy and fulfilled. On a physical level, are you happy with your body? Are you happy with your health? Is your health okay? Are you emotionally fulfilled or not? Relationships, partners, marriages, family life, friends. Are you intellectually fulfilled? Are you financially stable? Are you professionally happy? And are you spiritually connected? If any of those areas is not good, and usually nobody's perfect in all areas of life, but we can really improve all of the areas of life and find balance if we commit to this fulfilling. And one of the keys is learning the 3 principles of the soul and dealing with your family from a wisdom that comes from this knowledge. So if you're not happy and fulfilled in any level, or someone you know, but I always tell people, think about yourself first, because sometimes when we're working with self-knowledge and self-connection and personal development, we tend to see everybody else as problematic and not ourselves. So focus on yourself first, and then you can use all of this to analyze other people. But if you're not, you may be in identification mode. So apparently these are two icebergs, but under the surface, they're sharing the same base or energy. So what does this mean in a constellation perspective? We may think we're living our own life script, but we may in reality be reenacting past pain and unfinished business in the family soul. So one of the examples I can give you in this case is people who are born and they think they're the first children, but then they find out they had two unborn siblings, and they are living the life script of who the first brother would be. So the person chooses a profession, the person's an artist, but then the person decides to be an economist, God knows why. The reason is that that person feels the energetic blueprint of an unborn sibling that was never mentioned, but that would have had the economist life script if that brother had been born. So we pick up on the energies of the unconscious ocean of the soul without even realizing it. And that's what we call identification mode. I decided to put a picture of a Khoisan. This is an ethnicity in Africa. Though constellations are inspired with by Bert Hellinger with the contact he had with the Zulus, but traditional African cultures are very aware of this wisdom, and not just them, other traditional cultures in Asia and the Americas as well, and some in Europe too. So we need to look at the past and release it. And these cultures are very aware of it. When they say, I see you and I am here, they're saying it from the heart. When a Zulu or a Khoisan person says, I see you, they see you and your parents behind you and your grandparents behind you and 8 generations behind you. So they see you as the collective ocean of the soul. We don't do this in our culture, but if we start doing this to each and every person we meet, we will be more respectful, we will live in more loving connection, and we will feel more peaceful. Because when you want to start an argument with a person and you take your time to look at the person and say, I see you, and the collective, I see you, you're looking at somebody's child. You're looking at someone who had a mother and a father. So you start seeing that person with the eyes of a mother and father, and you inevitably will be more loving. So when the past is released and you say, I see you, I am here, you are anchoring the present moment in your mind and heart, and new light can shine through the icebergs in the ocean. When we release the past, the family soul expands into cosmic consciousness. So we're doing a collective favor every time we expand our individual minds in a family soul conception, because the family soul may be very muffled in archaic past pain. So when we release it, the soul expands, the whole ocean grows. Now, the question is, how are family soul wounds created? How do we get these oil spills in the family soul? Emotional blockages in the 5 circles of love that allow the life flow. Now, this is very technical vocabulary, so I'm going to take my time to explain it to you. Whenever there is emotional blockage in past generations, a wound is created, an oil spill is created. And this is a crop circle in Switzerland, and it was the best image I could find to explain what Bert Hellinger, the creator of constellations, calls the 5 circles of love. The first circle is the tiny one over here, and unfortunately, it's where most people are imprisoned in. The second circle is a little larger. It gives us more room to breathe. The third circle is even larger. The fourth circle is a lot larger. And the fifth circle is almost infinite. It brings space to get out of here and get out of any circles, so to speak, and you spiral up. What is the first circle of love? It's the moment our parents meet and everything that happened before they met. So all the past generations are included in this tiny circle over here. And it's the strongest energy in our unconscious mind. It's what determines the family ocean. The second circle is our conception, the moment we're conceived in our mother's womb, our childhood, and our teenage days up until you're 21 years old. That's why I don't really allow people to come to Cardinal Method Constellations before they're 27. And if they're over 18, they can come with a parent or guardian. They do not come by themselves and only to represent, because the energy is too intense and we can't handle the contents of the family soul when we're younger than 21, which is usually when people have schizophrenic collapses and develop mental illness, sometimes before. But if we think of the chakras, it's when the money put out. So if we think of 7 years, right, until age 7, first chakra, until 14, the second chakra, until 21, the third chakra, then we've established the structural level of consciousness. The second circle, as I said, is where a lot of people are. Sometimes people cannot get away from their childhood memories and teenage days. So they don't move forward into the third circle, which is leaving your parents' home and creating an adult life. So you can either get married and have children and have a profession and have a home of your own and support yourself. That's the third circle of love. Adults who don't do this are still imprisoned and entangled either in the first or the second circles. The fourth circle is serving your community. So once you have established yourself as an independent adult individual on all levels, you can provide awesomeness for a community and enlarge your field of existence. And the fifth circle is belonging to humanity at a higher consciousness level, which means loving every human being in humanity as if that person were yourself or someone in your family, which is something Hallinger says only the saints were able to do, to transcend the family soul and to see all individuals as one, including ourselves. So with that introduction, what are the 3 principles of the soul? Hierarchy, belonging, and balance. Now, for people who are not familiar with these terms, hierarchy is not in an obvious sense here, neither is belonging, and much less balance. So the 3 principles of the soul in the constellation perspective and this soul level are hierarchy in a generational sense. So these are very simple to grasp. Ancient cultures knew about this. Our culture has forgotten about it. We have to remember them again. But it just, hierarchy in a generational flow sense means your mother is big and you are small. Your grandmother is bigger than both of you. Your great grandmother is huge compared to the other generations. We'll get deeper into this knowledge. Belonging means everybody belongs. There can be no exclusion. We'll talk about that as well. And the third one is balance, which means the giving and receiving energy must be integrated and orderly. So how does this work? The first principle is generational hierarchy, meaning hierarchy in a family is generational. Your mother is big and you are small. In Christianity, there is the commandment, right? Honor mother and father. I think it's the 4th commandment. Your grandmother is bigger than both of you. Your child is smaller than you. Why do we create so much confusion with hierarchy in our families? We'll get to that in a minute. But when you open a constellation field, once you are in a constellation field, this is you, and this would be the size of a 7th-generation ancestor, and this would be the size of a 4th-generation ancestor. So the further you go in the past, the larger in energy the ancestor is. It's incredible. So take a moment to take a deep breath right now, everybody. Just pause a little bit. To understand that now this is within each and every one of us in our culture, okay? And I do believe this is mostly cultural. At least this aspect, this part of the 12-step journey is very cultural. The other are individual choices, most of the other lessons. But here we have intrinsic arrogance in younger generations. It's part of human nature. It's become part of human nature when it comes to cultures like our Western culture. Hellinger says that the problem of humanity is arrogance, the biggest problem. We solve all the problems of humanity if we extinguish and eradicate intrinsic arrogance. We'll talk about what arrogance is in a second. And the second problem with hierarchy is unawareness of your systemic position, not understanding that you are small and your mother is big, and that children do not take care of parents or grandparents for that matter. So a child's mind is arrogant. If you see arrogant adults, they are thinking with a childish mindset. There are two ways of arrogance to manifest in a child's mind. The first is judgment, which is judging the personalities, the flaws, and the life experiences of our parents and ancestors. So my grandfather collapsed financially. My mother was depressed. My great-grandfather was an alcoholic. All of this is judgment, and all of this is arrogance. So an adult with a child's mind remains with a judgmental mindset for the rest of life. You can be an adult and still be thinking like a 7-year-old. The second type of arrogance, which is less obvious and some people don't accept it as arrogance, is emotional caretaking. I'm not talking about physical caretaking of elderly parents. We should care for them, what they eat, if they're clothed, if they have a place to sleep, if they're cared for. What I'm saying is that emotional care is not natural. Parents are big, children are small. Children do not nurture their parents emotionally, much less their grandparents. And I do see a lot of clients who have needy grandmothers, and the granddaughter is taking care of the grandmother and not getting married and not having boyfriends and not getting a job and not having children because she's taking care of the grandmother. So that's like the leaf giving all the nutrients back to the roots of the tree, and that tree is going to die. It's against the flow of nature. So a mother behaves like a victim and asks her children to nurture her emotionally. This is not healthy. The mother is in a comfort zone mode, behaving like a child, and children will create a fantasy that they are the nurturers. So that's also known as inversion. This picture of the royal family is systemically all wrong, because as you see, the little boy here is almost taking care of his father. She is the ancestor, the Queen of England, so she should be in the hierarchy position. So everything is out of order in this picture. Why do children have space in the family system to develop an arrogant mind? It's a ball and socket mechanism. Parents do not do their job, and I'm not saying that it is something to condemn parents for, because some people just don't have that awareness and don't have that information. But emotionally immature parents will allow children to develop fantasies of arrogance and to develop the fantasy that that child is more important or can nurture the parent or has more resources than the parent. So immature adults, inconsistent behavior in parenting will create confusion in a child's mind and create room for arrogance. Disconnection. You can see that this one doesn't want to be in the picture, doesn't want to connect to his father. This one connects to his son, and this is very common in my practice. I see this a lot. My father doesn't connect with me. His father didn't connect with him. I'll have a son to nurture me for the lack and to make up for the lack of nurturing in the past. This is terrible. Poor child. The child doesn't have the resources to fulfill. That's not the child's place or the child's job, right? This is a movie where mother-in-law creates havoc in the daughter-in-law's life. And for the soul, it doesn't have to be a blood connection. The moment you become an in-law, for the soul, you have a mother status. The mother-in-law has the status of a biological mother, a substitute mother for an adoptive child. The soul does not understand the sophistications of biological and adoptive, in-laws, whatever. So if there's disconnection between generations, if the past generations do not nurture the new generations, if they dispute, because every time we get into arguments and there is some sort of fighting or competition, that means people are equal. In between generations, people are not equal. So you cannot compete with a child. A mother cannot compete with a daughter, or the daughter cannot compete with the mother, right? But what I'm talking about here is when mother figures compete with daughter figures, envy and spite with younger generations. This all creates room for arrogance in a child's mind. So the hierarchy solution, the solution to the problem of hierarchy is sense of proportion. And that's an individual job. You must know your place and your size in a family system. Your father is big, you are small. Your child is small, you are big. Your grandfather is bigger than everybody. The grandmother is bigger than the mother, the great-grandmother, the grandmother, the mother, the child. So connect and create flow in an orderly perspective, in a generational perspective, so to speak. All right? Everybody take a deep breath. The principle of belonging, they don't have a hierarchy. They're equally important. But what I see a lot in my practice, the most problematic aspect of people's lives tends to have to do with belonging. What does it mean? It means that everybody belongs, and not just because of blood connections. So the belonging wound is exclusion. So the wound in hierarchy is arrogance. The wound in belonging is exclusion. It creates huge pain. It's a huge oil spill in that family ocean. So the problem with having official and non-official members of a family is incredible. So ex-partners, there are no such thing as exes in a family soul. The soul does not understand the word ex. It's the first wife, the second wife, the third wife, the first husband, second husband. There are no exes. There are numbers, the first child, the second child, the third child. Triangular relationships. If there's a lover, that lover belongs to the soul. It's very problematic and delicate. Unofficial lovers, people who don't have an official relationship, have a relationship for 10 years, never bring that partner to the family. That partner exists, but that partner is excluded. Wound in the family soul. Parallel families used to be very common in 3 generations ago, I guess. Unborn children. Remember, there are numbers in the family. So a person may think she is the firstborn, but there are 3 brothers who were not born before her. So she's not number 1, she's number 4. That creates confusion because children feel the truth very vividly. So in the heart we know, but we don't want to see. Or no one tells us that there are unborn children. Sometimes the father doesn't even know that the first girlfriend had a miscarriage. The problem with unofficial information is very strong because everything exists on a soul level, but not necessarily on the official level. So all secrets create wounds in the family soul. Financial collapses. This is a wound. If it's not honored, if it becomes a shameful episode, it creates a wound. Taboos, things you don't talk about. Exclusion, wound in the family soul, oil spill in the ocean. So the heart knows, but we don't want to see. We close one eye. It's like, let's not talk about that. Keeping images that wound the soul. The truth heals the soul. And the problem with exclusion is that it acts like a black hole. Any excluded person or energy will become the most important person in the family system. If the person or energy or episode becomes the gravitational center of the unconscious mind. And that excluded person or energy will make itself or herself or himself be seen in future generations. How does that happen? Obesity, disease, cancer in children. A child that has a disease only 100% of the time will you have a family secret, a family exclusion, some sort of pain in the family soul that is making itself be seen in the form of disease in a child. Obese people, he's holding 2 or 3 people in his body. And we'll talk more about that. Why do people represent other energies in their unconscious mind? Usually the most sensitive members of the family soul pick up on that. Self-destruction behavior. A lot of people who are drug addicts or who drink too much, who are alcoholics, they're more connected to death than to life. And why is that? Because there are a lot of unseen people in the world of the dead that were not honored. And for the soul, there is no difference between having a physical body and being alive in a body and being not in a physical body. Some people, we see this in constellations, some people are not incarnated, they're like a great grandmother, and they're more connected to life than your teenage cousin who is self-destructing and addicted to crack. Because the world of the dead needs to be honored. And whenever there is exclusion, 1 or 2 or more family members will engage in self-destruction. Financial collapses, repeating past pain. It's not natural. Life is designed to be abundant. Whenever people have financial struggles, there has been financial trauma in the family soul in past generations. The solution to exclusion is I see you. When you see, you include. You open both eyes. You see with the eyes of the soul, and you include that energy. You welcome all stories and all aspects of the personality. You include all there is. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My great-grandfather lost the family fortune. Stop judging that. Include it all. Take that strength, and then the soul will heal. The soul heals when you stop judging and when you consent to the truth. Deep breath. We're moving forward to the third principle, which is balance in giving and receiving. This is important. In different generations, so mother, child, the mother gives 100%, the child receives 100% from the mother. In the same generation, siblings, husbands, wives, it's a 50-50 ratio. And remember the vertical and horizontal lines. What I see a lot is identification with an aunt or uncle. So a person had parents who did not have a lot of money, but there was a rich uncle. And the person in the arrogance validates the uncle more than the father. You create a diagonal identification in a Cardinal method vocabulary that will not allow your life to flow as abundantly and wonderfully as it should, because you're not honoring the person in his or her place and size. You are creating confusion and chaos in the family soul. And the family soul is geometric. This is something I'm always saying, and the Cardinal method is geometric. One of the reasons is that your place and size in the soul must follow the natural flow for your life to be beautiful. So balance between generations is a vertical flow. Parents give 100% to their children. Children receive 100% from their parents. If children try to give back to the parents, it's inversion. Grandparents may watch over their grandchildren as long as you're not skipping a generation. I see this a lot too. People in their arrogance are validating the grandparent as a mother or father figure, and they ignore their parents because their parents are inconsistent. So my grandmother is wonderful, my mom is not. It wounds the soul when you do that, because you're not respecting the flow and the balance and hierarchy either. Balance in the same generation is a 50-50 formula. So between couples, the husband cannot parent the wife. The wife cannot behave like a child with her husband, or vice versa. The man cannot behave like a little boy and the wife be the mother figure in a couple. It's going to create imbalance. Siblings. There is a difference between, there are 7 children in the family, the oldest and the youngest. It's not hierarchy, it's called precedence. So brothers and sisters do not take care of each other. That's the parents' job. If you have an older sibling or you are an older sibling taking care of a younger one, it's not your job. And you're creating confusion and turmoil and a little downward spiral in that water of the ocean of your family. Friends, this is one that I always see at Renova. People having problems with their friendships. If you're having any problem with friends, there is interference. There is a projection of your family wounds, either in the first or second circle, and you're projecting a problematic sister and a friend. Because nature intended friendships to be light and lovely and wonderful and fun. So if your friends are not fun, there's something wrong. There's projection. I'm not saying that you can't be there for a friend when in times of trouble. It's not what I'm saying. But friends should have fun. That's what nature intended. So if you have a problematic friend that sucks you dry, there's a problem in balance there. Business partners and colleagues. When we have business constellations, partners should be equal. You cannot have one partner doing everything and the other doing nothing. Colleagues in a job, if you get the same salary, there is no hierarchy. You should be doing the job equally. There should be balance there. The balance problems have to do with giving and receiving, and what happens is that compensation tends to substitute balance. So you have to see the difference between a balanced relationship and a compensating attitude. People are compensating when they're either givers or they're takers. So givers are compensating because they feel guilty about something, meaning my parents had such a horrible life. How dare I be happy? So let me help the world and humanity and overwhelm myself so that I'm not as happy as I can be. Let me be miserable like my parents so that I don't feel guilty about my happiness. The takers are compensating for lack because they probably had inconsistent parents, disconnected parents, so they feel rage and then they compensate in the present moment. So givers are compensating all of guilt, so they attract demands from all directions. They are overwhelmed all the time. So the result of giving too much is that you're constantly overwhelmed. You're drowning in the demands. And the strategy, the unconscious gain, the secondary gain that givers get from this is that it creates an incontestable image to alleviate guilt. So I do a lot for others, so don't hate me if I'm happy. I am compensating for the pain of my ancestors. I'm not allowing myself to be happy. That's a giver attitude, and it's hurting the balance principle. The takers are the victims or the martyrs. The martyrs are more the givers, but the victims are the takers, meaning they're compensating for some sort of lack. They have a consciousness of scarcity. They demand from others all the time, and they make others feel guilty. They're always asking for something. So the taker strategy is manipulation. And the result of that is the taking too much from everybody, exhausting other family members. So they're literally a black hole that sucks everything into that place, right? In Chinese medicine, we'll talk about that when we talk about the 5 elements in the next sessions. I think it's the 5th one. The greedy child that sucks the parents and the substitute parents dry, because the takers will transform everybody around them into parents. You need to nurture me. It could be a friend, it could be a family, another family member, it could be an aunt or uncle, it could be a business partner. The takers will exhaust people around them and hurt the balance principle. So the solution is balance in giving and receiving. So in different generations, parents give, children receive. Receive from your parents. Take everything they have to give you, and you don't have to give it back to them. You move forward. Remember the circles of love. You do something good for humanity. You thank your parents for your life by doing something good with your life and moving forward. In the same generations, siblings and friends should have fun. You do not take care of a sibling. I see a lot of, some people have problematic brothers and sisters. It's not your job to take care of them. It's your parents' job. And we do a lot of that in Constellation too, a lot of that healing regarding problematic siblings. And friends should have fun. If you're not having fun with your friends, you're projecting family pain. You can be sure of that. Business colleagues, partners, and clients, if you're in commerce, make sure you charge accordingly. Fair value exchanges. You get a salary, you work for that. If you get paid huge sums of money and you don't do your work, you're hurting the balance principle. If you get paid a little tiny salary and you do the work of 8 people, that's wrong. You're a giver. It's not balanced. Business partners, same thing. It needs to be a 50-50 ratio. That's the formula. So with all that in mind, all those questions, all those contents that you now know, what is your individual attitude from now on? You become the Dalai Lama. Or you inspire yourself in the Dalai Lama. No, seriously, what you really we really should inspire ourselves in people who bring peace, but it's about truth more than anything else. Do not ask for peace at any cost or any price. Truth comes first. So the first thing you do, you see the truth. You dive deep and you see the truth underneath the surface. The second thing you do is accept and consent to the reality that is. If you have an alcoholic parent, if you have crazy grandparents, if you have problematic siblings, stop trying to change people. Stop fighting against who they are and what they are, and consent to what is, to the reality and the truth of what is. The third thing you do is take the strength from your parents. You take everything from your parents. All the ancestral energy will come to you through your parents. Your parents are the key. You do not skip to the 7th generation to get the strength. The Cardinal method uses the bow and arrow image. So your parents are the bow and you are the arrow, and life will shoot you forward in your sacred path if you allow it, if you are connected to the 3 principles of the soul. So we should take the strength from our parents and move forward. You don't take the strength from the father and not from the mother, because that arrow is going to go anywhere but where the target should be, or vice versa. You take the strength from both parents, the 2 legs, the 2 arms, and you move forward. Life will shoot you all the way to your destiny if you do that. If you don't, you're going to be in a downward spiral, you're going to be stagnant, or you're going to be moving backwards, which is terrible. Some people never leave the bow, right? They stay in the 1st or 2nd circles of love. 4th thing you need to do, keep a positive mind. Don't focus on the alcoholic, on the flaws, on the personality issues of your parents, grandparents, whoever in your family. Focus on life, focus on yourself and the positive thinking that you can develop. And bring light to your family souls. The more you work on yourself, the more you become a beacon of light. And the lighter you become, the less weight you carry. So the same energy can be a weight or strength. It's weight if it's in front of you. It's strength when it's behind you, pushing you forward to be a wonderful, happy person. So the more you work on yourself, the more the area of the soul you're immersed in becomes warmer, it becomes clearer, and it becomes more beautiful. You clear away those oil spills and oil stains. So be the light. Work on yourself. Be creative. Find out everything you can about your family history. Very often, more than one constellation is needed. I have seen people who have done one and who went skyrocketing to their destiny, but usually it takes more. We hold constellations at Renova every single month for that very reason. We go layer by layer, and working on yourself will help you, not only you, but your family, and especially the future generations. The Native Americans that I inspire myself to create and develop the Cardinal method say that what you do today will ripple effect, will reverberate 7 generations ahead of you. So you will really reap all those wonderful things only 7 generations in front of you. You won't be here to see it. So they talk about the principle of being impeccable. try to be impeccable in your life, and the future generations will thank you. So this is it for content. If you have any questions, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Maybe you've typed some already. So let's see if you have anything to ask, anything to share. We did have some questions before from other members. So we still have some time for you guys to ask all the questions you want. You can share your experiences as well, because we all grow with each other. So let's see. Take deep breaths. I know it's a lot to digest. And some people are asking, what is I'm getting some messages here in my phone from people who couldn't be here, but who have asked questions about constellations before. So I'm just going to ask, share some with you. Does it help the family to represent, or do you always have to have your own constellation? So those of you who come to Renova constantly know that we are always piggyback writing in other people's constellations. And I will be honest with you, the most significant, incredible shifts I've seen in my life in constellations were with people who were representing and not having their own. The reason for that is that when we're having our own constellations, unconsciously we have a lot of defense mechanisms. We want to protect the secrets. We want to be loyal to people who want to keep secrets in the family. We don't want to be arrogant on an unconscious level. And when we're representing, our defense mechanisms are not so intense, and we are always going to see ourselves in other people's stories. That's why I always tell people, share your experiences and ask your questions and tell us how you're doing, because we all grow and learn from each other as mirror images. So representing, either if you represent or if you have your own, you will help not only yourself, but your family. Absolutely. Past generations will benefit, but especially future generations. Beth is asking a question. Is there a way to know which generation is the one to heal in ancestral trauma? Yes. Well, depending on the priority. So the soul is ready to heal a specific story in each constellation that you have. So if you come for, we can't know beforehand. When you come to a constellation, you're going to tell me something that's going on with someone in the present moment in this generation. So you say, I have struggles with money. I never save. I can't buy my house, or this or that. The root cause of that specific problem, one of the root causes may be in your great-grandfather, but we cannot presume. We don't assume anything in constellations. It's called a phenomenological approach to healing. So you know the theory, but you don't say what's going to happen. You can't predict. It's generational that you know, but you don't know which one it is. What I always tell people is, before your constellation, find out everything you can about your family, both maternal and paternal, because you have 8 great-grandparents, right? So the issue may be with the paternal great-grandparents on your father's side or something like that. We don't know beforehand, but it will show up. So you heal an ancestral trauma. You always heal an ancestral trauma in a constellation, but we can't predict which one it will be. Is that decided as a soul before coming to the earth? Well, the constellation approach does not talk about past lives and does not talk about choosing coming to the earth to these parents. It just talks about the unfathomable destiny of each individual. They believe in a mystery that is beyond our cognitive understanding. In the Cardinal method, I expand on that. So we do see choices in past lives and spiritual connections. So my understanding of this, and this is me, you can quote me on this, but not the constellation people. We know everything. We choose our parents, and we know exactly what we're getting into when we decide to incarnate. And other people who work with constellations will say the same thing. We're like little Buddhas. And some theories will say that we are here to heal our great grandparents and our grandparents' generations. Our parents are just the vehicle for us to help heal those two layers of consciousness. That's what, there's a lot of theory in constellation, sometimes consensus, sometimes not a lot. But I do agree with that. I tend to see that in my experience. But sometimes we're dealing with 7 generations back. I always include 7 generations in the Cardinal method, sometimes 8. I've seen 12 and 11. But that's my opinion. My opinion is we do know exactly what we're getting into, so we should not complain. But when we're here in this world with the physical body, sometimes it's not easy. And I have not met one single person in my life, myself included, who does not complain a lot about the struggles of life. But one of the keys to healing, Hallinger will say, is to stop complaining, which is to observe in silence and digest and breathe and heal when you consent to what is, when you choose to stop complaining and to start healing. So Beth is still asking a question. So you guys can elaborate on this, okay? Take your time. It's good because we still have some minutes to go. We still have 30 minutes. So enjoy it, because I know I really encourage you to ask questions. Sometimes it takes a while for us to digest the content. So you may have a question, may wake up with a question. That used to happen to me. I would have constellation questions at 4 a.m. and write them down and then ask my instructor when I was taking the course. So ask those questions in the group, ask those questions in our website, because we all grow together as a group. So that's saying powerful. Wow. Thank you, Paula. I'm so glad, Suzette. Yeah, you're familiar with all this, but we always learn something different, right? When we dive deeper into the theory. And Beth is saying, trying to type something that is not coming through. Okay. Why don't we all take a deep breath? Because, as I said, just breathing in those concepts, just connecting to this can be overwhelming. It hits you in the face and you don't want to talk and you just want to digest it all. We had a prior group in Portuguese and people were like, I can't ask any questions right now. I'll have to ask in the group 2 days from today. And now they're asking questions from the other group of people in the Portuguese speaking group. So people are asking about the guilt of the survival. What is that? The guilt of the survivor. Okay. When there are a lot of unborn children in a family, what I see a lot at Renova, it's interesting. A lot of Jewish people come, and there's always a Holocaust story. The Holocaust is still an open wound in humanity, and in Jewish families especially. So I see a lot of Jewish people who don't allow themselves to be happy because of the Holocaust. How dare I be happy if the Holocaust has happened? Since the Holocaust happened, how dare I be happy? So many people suffered, right? And a person was asking here, Ernesto was asking, my parents had a very difficult life and now I struggle with allowing myself to be rich because they always have financial collapses. They are farmers. Yeah, so when I say take the strength from your parents is make their effort worthwhile. They want to see you happy. The best gift you can give your parents is to be a happy person. If they struggle so much, it's because they want to give you a healthy, happy life. One of the problems I see is that people talk about their parents complaining a lot. Oh, I had a horrible childhood. You had everything. How dare you do this or that? That makes a child guilty. We have to be careful about what we say to children, especially before age 7. 2 things we don't say to children before age 7. 1, complain about your childhood being worse than theirs because they will feel guilty about their childhood being good. And the second is to say please to children, because when you say please, you are inverting hierarchy. They get confused about who's the boss. Seriously, this is almost biological. It's a specimen thing. It has to do with our biology. If you say please to a child, you're making the child think that they have the hierarchy in the story, that they have a choice about it. They ask discipline of the adults. They ask authority figures. So you say please to ancestors and to your parents. And you never say please to children. Okay? Okay, Beth is saying, can a disease that we get in here that we get be here to be healing a personal karmic experience. Yeah, well, the constellation concept is not about karma. It's about generational healing. What I do believe, Edgar Casey says this. He said this. He is the American mystic, right? The spiritual man. And in the US, and a very amazing reference. Edgar Casey will say, we attract our family according to our karma. But the constellation vocabulary and the constellation theory does not include past lives or karma. They will say a disease is a systemic issue. A disease is unfinished business in a family soul that is making itself be seen as a disease in a child. And 100% of the time, there will be something horrible happening in the past generations that will be manifesting as a disease. So it's very common to constellate diseases. I've seen brain cancer, pancreas cancer, what else? Not high blood pressure, some serious stuff, heart conditions, and there's always a systemic thing. It could be karmic and family, but there will always be a family causal factor. There will always be a root in an ancestral story. Absolutely. So karmic experience, if you think of karma as a generational thing, because it's true, what you do in this life will will affect the future generations. So if your grandfather had a lot of parallel families, for instance, I saw a case once that the grandfather had 3 families, the official one and 2 parallel families in different cities. There was a lot of exclusion there. And the boy was a total crack addict. And then when you do the constellation, well, the grandfather had parallel families. So the exclusion is making itself be seen as a crack addiction. Same can happen for a disease. If you look at the constellation perspective, from the lens of family constellation perspectives, I'm not saying it's the only way to see it, but you can be sure that we need to add constellations to energy healing. It's not just about karma or past lives. There will be a mirror image, a matching energy in the family system that matches the karma of that person in past lives. So let me know if that makes sense, Beth. Let me know if I answered your question, because I talk so much, sometimes I don't know if I've answered the question. Deb is asking here, I have 3 children, age 19 and twins, age 16. I have participated in many constellations over the past 4 years. Wonderful. My husband has not. Okay. I know I cannot heal what my husband holds from his family system. Yeah, in a way you can, because I'm not saying that you can get into his mind and do whatever it's his job to do. But the more you do, the more constellations you participate in, the more it ripple effects in his system. So even if you have a closed mind husband, a husband who doesn't want to do it, who doesn't want to go, and people who resist going to constellations are resisting facing the pain. And I talked about this in the first session, right? When we face the pain, it's not as bad as we think it is. We amplify it. So we avoid pain, and then we create more problems because it's festering there. When we go through the pain, we release it, and it's beautiful. But the fact that your husband doesn't go to constellations doesn't mean that your job is not, your work is not, your job is not being done. It doesn't mean that your work is not ripple affecting in his field and it's not helping your kids, because it is. So, okay, it has been a challenge for me to think about what my children carry from his family system. The more you do constellations, the more his system will heal. So when people get married, it's like 2 drops of water that merge into one. We marry mirror images of our family system. So you're marrying a man that has wounds in his system that are mirror images of the wounds in your system. This is basic constellation theory as well. So the more you heal your system, the more you're healing his. I know I have to let go of this. Yeah, you have, because you're already helping them. and trust that the universe will provide. It's already providing because you've been doing constellations for 4 years. A way for my children to heal. You are healing. That's what it is. So remember the DNA, like the little ladders connect. The flow happens to his system too. So the more you heal, the more you go, the more he benefits. He really literally is piggyback riding in your constellation work, and your children are benefiting 100%, not just 50%. Okay, Beth, good. I completely answered the question. Makes sense. Nice. The thing is, constellations by themselves do not explain it all, in my opinion, and neither do past life theories. We have to connect both. It's a synthesis. That's why I like dialectics so much. The thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis will bring the light, right? And that's why the Cardinal method has 4 pillars of knowledge, because I'm never satisfied with just one specific answer, I would say. Though, if you want only one answer to all the problems in life, it always is love. The more we connect to love, the more we heal everything. When we're connected to love, we don't judge. So we're healing our judgmental attitudes of arrogance regarding the hierarchy, regarding the everything in family constellations, right? But we have a lot of unfoldings from pain. So when we are talking about painful experiences, there are different explanations. Everything heals with love, but different perspectives will help us see the big picture with richer elements. That's my opinion. Deb says, that's good news. I had no idea I could affect my spouse's family system. Very free. Oh, yes. Every time you go to, if you're married, every time you go to a constellation field, your husband's system is benefiting only 100% from your work. As I said, 2 droplets of water who merge into one. So yes, that's one of the benefits of getting married to an energy healing practitioner and an energy light worker like you. He's benefiting without having to do anything. But no, he's doing something. Deb, this is important. He's allowing, unconsciously, he's giving permission. Because if his family soul was not ready to heal, you would not be setting foot in any constellation fields. So just the fact that the family system is open for you to do the work, you're not doing it indirectly. You're directly doing the work because permission has been given to you. Okay? Are more souls coming in more evolved than prior souls? Could more children be coming in more arrogant because they are more evolved than their parents and grandparents? Okay, there's a difference between arrogance and a difference between arrogance and calling on to the parents and grandparents when they're not behaving with integrity. Children know and feel the truth very strongly and very intensely. What I see kids in this generation doing is that they feel free to express their indignation, which did not happen in past generations. Children knew and felt, but they did not have the freedom to speak out. Today, they feel and sense everything like all children do, but there's more freedom for them to speak out. So I'm looking at this from a structural perspective. Our societies today give children more freedom to speak the truth and to call out on their parents and grandparents when they're behaving unethically or without integrity or whatever. I also believe that more evolved souls are coming to the world. But the thing is, being more evolved does not mean you're more arrogant. Being arrogant is being judgmental. Being evolved is being more loving and focusing on the life that has been given to you and not in the personality flaws of the parents and grandparents. So let me know, Beth, if this makes sense to you. There's a difference between fighting for integrity and asking for the truth. That's not being arrogant. Being arrogant is judging the personality and the flaws. It's judging. It's not calling out. It's not pointing out. Does this make sense? It's one subtle difference that makes all the difference. When you point out the flaw in a loving way, you're not being arrogant. You're just honoring the truth. But when you point out the flaw and you criticize and you judge, then you're being arrogant and you're creating a wound in the family soul. That my heart has expanded greatly with these comments. Good. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, it seems like you were holding a lot of anguish about this and that you were only doing 50% of the work. But the great thing about constellations, remember, it's like water. So the soul, the family soul, the collective soul is water. If you purify it, everything gets purified. You're not isolating the oil slick, the oil spill. You're bringing the oil spill and burning it or doing whatever you can to clean it. And it's a mirror image of your husband's system. So it's amazing, right? Everything you have in your system is present in his. It's resonance, it's vibrational resonance. We do not marry people who don't have the same vibrational resonance as we do, both in the light and in the shadow aspect. So I'm very, very happy that you took the weight off your chest. This is so good. Beth is asking, can you be a giver with some people and a taker with other people? Absolutely, yes. Yes, you can. So if you're a giver, this is so common. People are givers in their jobs and they're takers in their marriage. And then they justify to the spouse, you have no idea how drained I am in my job. Now give me that. So if you make demands, if you're giving and taking in compensation, if it's not healthy. So absolutely, it's common. Some people are just givers everywhere. Some people are just takers everywhere. And some people give in one area of life, are givers in one area of life and takers in another area of life to compensate. So compensation is never a solution, right? It's always a distortion to deal with a prior distortion, a wound or whatever. So I hope that makes sense. Are you guys breathing? I hope you're breathing. It's a lot to digest, right? Paula, you've explained things so clearly. I'm so glad. And it resonates so deeply. I appreciate you very much. I'm so glad, Beth. I'm so happy with you guys that you're here and growing together and not only expanding, but also deepening your knowledge, right? And this is just the theory part. What I believe to be the alchemy of this 12-step journey is to do the know thyself exercises. That's when the magic truly happens. You need to know where you're going. So we need the map of the road, but the true alchemy happens when you answer the know thyself exercises questions. So the first session already there, and when we upload this a few days from now, the exercises will also be uploaded. So I highly recommend you do that, because this is the part where we share our experience and where we share our energy. And we'll be sharing that throughout the month. If the more you share your experiences and you ask your questions in the group below the video when it's posted, but your individual work, doing your inner alchemy, is the know thyself exercises. You will see shifts happening big time. Little tiny miracles will start happening if you do the whole thing, if you go through the whole process. So I'm very glad that you are connected to this, very grateful. Let me know if you have any other questions. If not, don't exhaust yourselves, okay? Just take deep breaths and you can ask your questions later. You always have space to ask your questions below the video anytime you want. Maybe you want to digest this because it's very intense, I know. And then ask questions later on, or share experiences or share dreams, anything that comes up for you. Yeah, so that's saying holding my breath. Yeah, I can sense that this was a big one for this group. And as I always say, conscious silence is the greatest soul healer. So if you need time to just let it sink in, just let your brain chill a little bit, let it sink into your heart and be in silence. Don't ask questions now. Just breathe and ask questions if you want later. Okay? Let's hold space and let's just breathe a little bit together. Make sure let's just do this. This is one of the cardinal method geometries. Just hold the size of your eyes here, the temples, and your third eye a little bit, because you really are expanding the, the soul's eye, not just your own, but your family's soul's eye. Everybody in your family is benefiting from your presence here. Your knowledge of the theory is ripple affecting in the family. Beth is asking, the icebergs are shifting, melting, and revealing hidden civilizations, and species. Yes. Is this happening at the earth level for the earth's healing? I believe so. I believe that, yes, absolutely. What was frozen and hidden before is now being melted and revealed to be integrated, to be honored, to be seen, and to be connected. I absolutely believe that. Yeah, that's my opinion, right? But that's what I feel. That's what I think. We're in a time right now, a very good time for humanity to be alive, because we've developed the scientific mind enough so that we're not superstitious when we think about spirituality and the soul, and we're now integrating spirit with an open heart and not with, the judgmental mindset of materialistic cultures and rationalizing everything and disrespecting spirit, because the excessively spiritual mindset created superstitious thinking, and the excessively scientific or rational or materialistic mind disrespected spirituality. And now things are merging. The scientific mind is welcoming the spiritual contents. And I always say this, energetic science is much more complex than materialistic science. Energy is more complex than matter, and consciousness is more complex than energy. So it's a beautiful time to be alive right now and seeing all that. Is this really a problem with climate change or necessary healing? I think we should be realistic, not pessimistic or overly optimistic, but I do see this with fairly optimistic eyes, Beth. That's my opinion from the things that I study. I believe the earth has a great ability to adapt itself as our human physical bodies do. And the same way that our bodies can be burdened by excessive industrial food and pollution and all that, there's body can handle only so much, like the earth. I do believe in the resilience of the earth, and I do believe there's a purge happening. And I do believe there's climate change and that we should be aware of that, but I also believe it's a necessary healing. So I tend to think more of on the necessary healing side more than the catastrophic mentality that tends to permeate the climate change, people who highlight that. I'm not saying we should ignore it, but I'm saying that we should also include a necessary healing happening. And I also believe that just like our emotions control our physiology and nothing is just physical, everything is also emotional, the earth responds according to our emotions as well. And I do believe that the more we raise our consciousness and awareness, the more we help the planet, the more we help humanity heal, and the more we help the earth. So I do healing of the earth every single day in my meditation. I dedicate some of my time to send healing to the planet Earth. And I recommend you do that too. I have a technique called magnified healing that I teach, that I love, and that I do it with magnified healing and the Cardinal method crystals. But you can send healing to the earth in any way you want, with Reiki, with whatever modalities you have in your possession. All right. Yeah, so you resonate, Beth. Okay, good. We're like-minded people here. This is nice. I want you guys to take another deep breath. And if any other questions pop up, just ask them. If not, let's just enjoy the silence, holding space together. Still have just a few more minutes. I think we're all recalibrating our energy after such an intense session. Today was pretty hardcore. I never go that deep in the constellation lectures, and today was, I know, more intense, which is good, which is what we wanted, which is what we were ready for. Our unconscious minds were craving this, so it was delivered that way. So remember to take another deep breath, integrating all the energies. And remembering that the soul is like water. The more we drink water, the more we benefit our souls. It's like literally, you can do this exercise. Drink water and think and send thoughts that you're healing and cleaning and clearing and cleansing the family soul. You're flushing the toxic waste and all the toxic energies of the soul. Every time I drink water, I really visualize me flushing and helping the energy move instead of being stagnant and creating downward spirals or anything like that. So water always cleans and cleanses, right? So this is another exercise I suggest you guys do. Breathe deep. I like silence. So I really don't mind that you're not asking questions and we're just being humans happy here together. And just sending healing to the family souls, to our families, to the generations. Let's do this. Think of our parents. So think of your father in your mind, in your mind's eye. Thank your father for your life. Make a reverence and take his strength. Perhaps he gives you a gift. And now think of your mother in your mind's eye and thank her for your life. Make a reverence. Take her strength. Perhaps she gives you a gift. And now see yourself in front of your sacred path. Imagine your parents behind you, your father with his right hand on your right shoulder, and your mother with her left hand on your left shoulder. Your parents always have your back. And they are where they should be, behind you, passing on the strength, giving you the strength of life. They are the bow and you are the arrow. And you move forward, walking your path in ease and grace. Life is easy and graceful when we take the strength of our ancestors and our parents. When we walk in love and light, embracing the three principles of the soul, and passing the energy forward, moving forward, and bringing life, blessing the 7 generations in front of us, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and everyone who comes after them. Take a long, deep breath through your nose and breathe out through your mouth, releasing all the toxic energy. Knowing that the same energy can be a weight or strength for you. It's a weight when you're carrying it in front of you. It's strength when you put it behind you and use it as a stepping stone to move forward. Imagine the beautiful turquoise blue ocean in front of you, the ocean you have cleared with your presence here tonight. Knowing you're benefiting those behind you, those beside you, and those in front of you. As you become a beacon of light, of multicolored light, you bless this ocean with your loving presence. And you give yourself permission to finally live in dynamic peace. No more stagnation, no more entanglements, moving forward in dynamic peace with grace and ease and love and light. Take another beautiful deep breath with your new life unfolding in front of you. Hold your heart with both hands. Breathe. Let it out. Feel your heartbeats, the drum that gives the rhythm of your life from now on. Lightly tap your heart with both hands as if your heart were a drum, creating your own rhythm of joy. And thank you all. Have a beautiful, blessed night and rest of your week. And I will see you next month. From now on, it's every first Wednesday of the month. People can hop on the journey anytime, any month. So if you can tell everybody you know and love about this course, the more people we have aboard, the merrier, the more wonderful it will be. We all know that this knowledge is precious. So the more we raise the consciousness of the planet, the happier everybody will be. Thank you again, everybody. Take good care, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.